Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is October 12th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see our next frontal system pushing across the region. There's some gusty winds, some precipitation to be had. Some lightning activity is possible as we go through the day today, and we got some snow for the higher terrain possible. We'll go over all those details here as we go through the video here this morning and take a look at the extended forecast as we get a couple days off and then some more active weather returns, it looks like, toward the end of next week. So again, here, infrared satellite imagery, you can see that wave action there off the Cascades of Washington, Oregon as the system plows down across the region. Wind woke me up a couple times there towards Puget Sound. Here is where I'm located off to the west of SeaTac. A little bit gusty out there. Nice fall system moving through. And what was it now? 63 years ago is a little bit of a different scenario as we had a huge storm moving up the coastline known as a Columbus Day storm. This one is coming out of the north. So it is that time of year where we do start getting a bit more active. If we take a look at the infrared satellite imagery, the simulated one on the European. So this is as we go through this morning, kind of see how that mimics what is going on right now. And then we continue on in through the day today and tomorrow. You see that activity start to push down across Oregon and then into California. And it's going to start to clear out pretty quickly here for BC and Washington for a couple of days. And we get a break before the next round of systems arrive. But you can see this potent storm for the state of California. So check out that video on the California Weather Watch. I'll probably be doing that one towards the noon hour. I do have a couple things to do this morning, but you can see this system pushing all the way down across California and us clearing out across Pacific Northwest again for a day or two. And this shows Seattle total cloud cover. So as we go through the day Monday, we're going to be clearing out quite rapidly from north to south across the region. And look at that, not much cloud cover from Monday, Wednesday, and maybe even Thursday, getting some decent weather out of this before the next system starts to arrive. And if you want a nice affordable home weather station, click on that link down below to save 10% off. This thing does all kinds of stuff like UV index, ambient light, solar radiation, solar powered. And if you get a blustery wind event like this morning, you would be able to look at your smartphone and see what those gusts were. So taking a look here at composite reflectivity, this is the high resolution rapid refresh, and this is what the Doppler radar may look like over the next 48 hours. So here we go as we go through this morning. You can see some of these showers moving through the area. You can't rule out some lightning activity with that, especially as we go on in towards the later portions of this morning. And right now, that's kind of favoring southwest Washington, it looks like, and some of western Oregon as that moves through. We're going to have some convergence zone feature moving down the Puget Sound. But the models have been in some disagreement here over the last few hours on just how strong that feature is going to be for places like Seattle. That you could kick off a lightning strike or two, and some heavier showers could be associated with it. And then you can see as we go through Sunday night, as tonight, and on through tomorrow, the system is going to be ripping down to the south. But there is going to be some wraparound moisture, some upslope flow here as we get the offshore winds coming across the region, and there could be some a bit of some enhanced snowfall across places like Blewett Pass up towards Lake Chelan across the higher terrain. You can kind of see how the green is mixed in there for some of the lower valley areas. There's Wenatchee right there and Lake Chelan, but across some of the higher terrain there, you're picking up some additional snowfall as we move on in through the day Monday. You can see that last all the way towards a very early afternoon there on Monday. And as the system continues to peel to the south, you can see it dropping precipitation as I toggled back towards Monday morning here. You can see the snowfall still occurring across the Cascades of Oregon. Then we go all the way on in through Tuesday, and that system starts to move off to the south and east, then pushes off to the east. So also looking at lightning flash density potential as we go through the day today. You can kind of see a little bit of this activity here across the Kitsap Peninsula up towards maybe Highway 101, so the Olympics, and then those showers are swinging through as we go on in through tonight. You can see at the Oregon coast as we go through tonight. This is getting pretty close to midnight there. Maybe Astoria, down towards Seaside, down towards Tillamook as well, and then that low pulling away and moving down as we go on in through very early Tuesday morning. So also we're getting some gusty winds out here. You can see they're southerly through the Puget Sound right now, westerly across the Cascades. But watch the change coming up here. As we scroll through the day today, you can see the northeast winds making their way down the Fraser River Valley out across the San Juans here. And that is the mark of some of that very modified Arctic air, or you could call it continental air, moving down across the region, pushing down out of the north. And you can still see the southerlies up the Puget Sound towards Tacoma right there, and the northerlies start to make their way down. That could be that boundary of that convergence zone as we go on into the afternoon and evening tonight. But then as we go on into tonight, you can see the low pressure system pulling down the Oregon coast, and these northeast winds really get established across the state of Washington, eventually pushing down across portions of Oregon. You can see the gorge winds looks like they get going sometime tomorrow morning, maybe later tomorrow morning. You can see those gusty east winds across the Oregon Cascades, and some of the models are showing some gusts for some locations across the higher terrain, maybe 50 plus. The Naches out there, Cascades of Washington, again Cascades of Oregon. You see the northeast winds really ripping across the entire region here as that storm moves down towards California. Now, looking at max wind gust, so a 10-meter wind gust, and as we go on into the day Monday, you can see some of these winds kind of bumping up here, and let me do that because this is hot off the presses, but there we go. Now we've got some of this data here for portions of the Oregon Cascades and the gorge. You can see some of these wind gusts do reach potentially up over 50 miles per hour. That Fraser River outflow, it's going to be a bit brisk. Look at Bellingham, 45, maybe some mid 40s coming across some of the San Juans here as well, and maybe some of Vancouver Island, and look out towards Quileute there, 44 miles per hour. When does that one get going? Let's go all the way back. That's pretty early tomorrow morning as these northeast winds get ripping, and even across portions of eastern Washington, you can see these gusts 40, 50 plus miles per hour. That would be kind of out of the northeasterly direction as we go through very early on Monday morning. So taking a look at a wider view of things here, and you can see the dew point temperature. So it's already starting to sag into British Columbia, but if I continue this out into the day today, you can kind of see this dry air really get established, pushes out over some of the Pacific Ocean here, and then you can see that storm system curl down and some of this dry air push out across the Pacific Northwest. Like some of these dew points into the single digits and the teens. So I bought some chapstick yesterday, some Carmex, so yeah, be prepared for that. We're going to dry out here as we go on in through Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before the next Pacific systems start to roll in. And just kind of a look at this as far as the surface pressure goes, you can see this strong pressure gradient, and that's why we're going to turn these winds north and northeast across the region as the system moves down across California. Pretty good pressure gradient there from this chillier air trying to move down into British Columbia, and this is really the blueprint here for snow events in the Pacific Northwest. Of course, we've got to cool things down a bit more across the northern hemisphere before we have to worry about that. I'm going to show you starting now. So purple octopus has returned. We're looking at the northern hemisphere. There is Greenland right there. There's Africa to the right, lower 48 states. There's the state of Hawaii, and there's Japan over here, for example. If I put this into motion, so this one right here at the Pacific Northwest, this is the system we are dealing with now. And you can kind of see that swing down and move right over us down the Oregon coast, down towards California there. And you can kind of see that tropospheric polar vortex kind of bob and weave there as that air starts to become a bit colder at this time of year. But once we get into November and December, it will get much colder as the direct rays of the sun are moving south. We're not nearly warming up the northern hemisphere as much as we do in the summertime, so the tropospheric polar vortex gets much stronger. Now, this is another way to look at it at 18,000 feet. And if I put this into motion, you'll see similar motion, and you can see our storm system right here across the Pacific Northwest, driving down towards California as we go through the next couple of days. But again, we have not cooled things off enough for this track of this cold air to really be cold enough to worry about any kind of lower elevation snowfall. And let's contrast this with the southern hemisphere. And you can see they're just coming out of their winter season, moving into spring, but still their polar vortex is much stronger at this time of year, and you can kind of see that. So that's what we're waiting for, is our hemisphere's turn to cool down as we go on into the fall and the winter months. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, looking at total snow Kachar ratio, if I scroll through here, you can see some pretty hefty totals across some of the Cascades here as we go through very early Tuesday morning. And there will be Blewett Pass right there, getting some of that enhanced snowfall and some of the higher terrain of the Cascades of Washington, Oregon, getting a pretty decent coating of snowfall. And we're, like I mentioned, we're going to feel the brisk temperatures across the region. But what you want to look at here is snow depth in inches. And if we take a look at that, you can see some of that, maybe a little bit for Snoqualmie Pass. It should not be enough to really cause too much in the way of disruption. And then as we go through the day on Monday, it looks like late Monday morning, some areas like Blewett Pass might be getting over 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of snow on the ground. Okay, so it's going to be snowing a lot of the day today and on into the day tomorrow. And then as I scroll through here, you can kind of see how the totals go back down. That's because we're still just in October, and the snow is going to be melting here over the next few days. So You can see across the Olympics, we get a bit of a coating of snow, but a lot of that's going to be melting here as we go on into October 17th or so. But of course, we're going to get more after that. It's still early enough in the season where what falls now is probably a lot of it's going to be melting, except across some of the higher peaks. And if we take a look here at apparent temperature, I'll scroll through this, and as we go on in through Monday morning, you'll see how the entire region is quite chilly. Interior of British Columbia, man, it's going to feel like 20 degrees across even some of the interior locations, but across some of the higher terrain, you're talking about it feeling maybe even below zero when you take the wind chill factor into account. And maybe some teens out there across the Washington Cascades. Look at the Rocky Mountains, super raw as well, all the way down into Montana and Wyoming as we go through Monday morning. Same thing for Tuesday morning, but you start to modify a little bit there across British Columbia, and then the next system will start rolling in here. You can kind of see it pushing towards the coastline there as we go through Thursday night. More on that here in a moment. Now, looking at total cloud cover, so I showed a little bit of this, but just for Seattle, and then you can see the storm pinwheeling across the Pacific Northwest. We go into tonight, into tomorrow. Look at Seattle, Southwest BC, really clear out. That starts to come down across portions of Oregon as we go through early morning on Tuesday, and then Wednesday. Tuesday, quite a glorious day. A lot of sunshine to be had out there, some brisk conditions, and then we go on into Wednesday, probably another very nice day across Pacific Northwest before the clouds start to arrive on Thursday. So if we take a look at the extended forecast a little bit here, we've got the European Artificial Intelligence on the left versus the GFS on the right. And again, there's our storm system in the short term pushing across the region. Ridging comes, we get some offshore flow and a couple nice days. Then the next system, this is just kind of a broad brush, but it will bring a frontal system through. It's not an exceptionally strong system, but the one next weekend could be more impactful, as you see as we roll on in through Saturday night and Sunday. This next system arriving on the GFS and the European Artificial Intelligence, both showing that one. And what happens after that? Well, we've got some agreement in the long range that we're going to kind of have an active jet stream moving across the North Pacific Ocean back towards the Pacific Northwest. And in fact, we'll look at that starting right now. So there's our initial system right here. Pacific Northwest to the right, Japan to the left, Hawaiian Islands bottom center, Alaska top center there. So then we get this ridging here in the offshore flow in the wake of that storm system. And then we wait for the next system as we go through Thursday. And then next weekend system is right there. And then you can see that ridging develop across the Gulf of Alaska. It's fairly transient. Then look at this jet stream gets really extended. Pacific jet stream moves all the way towards British Columbia and perhaps towards Washington and the west coast of North America here as we start to go into the later portions of October. So it continues to show some kind of an active pattern setting up there, but you don't want to get into the details on those individual systems just yet. There's probably going to be some fantasy windstorms and stuff in there, and maybe some atmospheric rivers, but again, it's way off into the extended. And if we look at the GFS, does it show the same thing? Well, you can kind of see the next weekend storm system right there, and then you can see that jet stream extended across. So the GFS agrees with that also as we go on in towards October 20 plus as we go through the end of the month. 6 to 10 days, so below normal for the West Coast. That goes through October 21st. There's the 6 to 10 day above. And I took a look here at the 8 to 14 day just to see what it showed as we go through that maybe pattern change with the strong jet moving across. And they do have that above average here across the Pacific Northwest. This is also something that was issued a couple days ago, some near normal and equal chances as we go on in through the first week of November. And also that above average signal still remains. And there's the Patreon page if you like. So I'm going to go wrap this video up here. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. We'll do this all again tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys then.